The cafeteria smelled like burnt coffee and recycled air. Victoria Hayes stabbed at her salad, the fork scraping against porcelain in a rhythm that matched her scattered thoughts. Around her, Monday afternoon conversations buzzed like static, words bleeding together into meaningless noise. Victoria. Earth to Victoria. She looked up. Sophie Bennett leaned across the table, brown eyes sharp with concern. They'd been friends since college, long enough that Sophie could read every crack in Victoria's carefully constructed mask. Sorry. Victoria forced a smile that felt like paper. Just tired. Liar. Sophie set down her fork with a deliberate clink. Talk to me. The cafeteria had emptied out, just scattered employees finishing meals, phones glowing in their faces. Victoria's hands trembled around her water glass. The words she'd been swallowing for years suddenly clawed at her throat, demanding release. Can I tell you something? Her voice came out smaller than she intended. Without you judging me? Sophie's hand found hers across the table, warm and steady. Always. Victoria took a breath that burned. I'm 28 years old and I've never been with anyone. Not really. I'm still a virgin. The confession hung in the air between them. Victoria waited for the shock, the pity, the inevitable awkwardness. But Sophie's expression remained soft, understanding. Why would I judge you for that? Because everyone else has figured it out. The words tumbled faster now, years of shame and confusion spilling out. They date, they fall in love, they have experiences. And I'm just stuck. I've tried, Sophie. I've tried so many times, but whenever things get serious, I freeze. Something always feels wrong. What do you think that something is? Victoria's throat tightened. I think I'm waiting for someone who sees me as more than just a conquest. Someone who wants to know my heart before they know my body. I want to feel safe and cherished and desired all at once. I don't want my first time to be just physical. I want it to mean something real. That's beautiful, Victoria. There's nothing wrong with wanting that. Do you think I'm being ridiculous? Holding out for some fairy tale that doesn't exist? Not at all. You're being true to yourself. And when you find the right person, they're going to treasure that about you. Victoria's voice cracked. I hope you're right, because sometimes I feel so lonely, like I'm watching everyone else live their lives while I'm stuck behind glass, and I wonder if there's something broken in me. There is nothing broken about you, Sophie said fiercely. You're waiting for something real. That takes courage. What neither woman knew was that every word had been absorbed by someone else. In the adjacent conference room, Nathan Cross sat frozen at the head of a table, pen hovering over a contract he could no longer see. The door stood slightly ajar, just enough for voices to carry through like smoke. At 36, Nathan had built Cross Technologies from nothing into a billion-dollar empire. People called him brilliant, ruthless, cold, a machine in an expensive suit. He'd spent years cultivating that reputation, building walls so high nothing could touch him. Until now, he knew Victoria Hayes, saw her around the building. Executive assistant in finance, quiet grace, honey brown hair she tucked behind her ear when she concentrated. But he'd never really looked at her, never noticed the way she moved through the world like she was trying not to take up too much space. Now her voice wrapped around him, vulnerable and honest, describing exactly the kind of connection he'd stopped believing existed. Nathan rose silently and moved closer to the door. He knew he shouldn't be listening. This was private, intimate, none of his business. But he couldn't pull away. Something in her words had cracked open a part of him he'd thought was dead. There's nothing broken about you, Sophie was saying. You're just waiting for something real. That takes courage. Courage. The word hit Nathan square in the chest. When was the last time he'd been truly courageous about anything other than business? He'd spent years telling himself that emotions were weakness, that attachments were liabilities. He'd dated beautiful women, accomplished women, women who knew exactly what they wanted from him. But those relationships had felt transactional, empty, pleasure without intimacy, connection without truth. What he felt building inside him now was entirely different, intense and consuming and terrifying. Victoria wasn't looking for wealth or status or power. She was looking for someone who would see her, really see her, and value her for exactly who she was. And in that moment, listening to her vulnerable confession through a half-open door, Nathan made a decision that would change both of their lives. He wanted to be that person for her. He wanted to be worthy of her trust, her vulnerability, her love. He just had to figure out how to reach her, without revealing that he'd been listening to the most private moment of her life. Nathan stepped back from the door, his heart pounding in a way it hadn't in years. His hands were shaking. The realization struck him like lightning. For the first time in his carefully controlled life, Nathan Cross had no plan. No strategy, no calculated approach. He only knew that he couldn't let Victoria Hayes slip through his fingers without trying to become the man she'd been waiting for. Nathan couldn't concentrate. Board meetings blurred into white noise as his mind drifted to Victoria. The way she tucked that strand of honey-brown hair behind her ear, the soft smile she gave everyone in the hallways, the quiet competence in everything she did. "What's going on with you?" James asked one afternoon, catching Nathan staring out his office window instead of reviewing contracts. "Nothing. I've known you 15 years, Nathan." "You don't do nothing." Nathan turned from the window. James was his business partner, his closest friend, one of the few people he trusted. But this felt too fragile to put into words. "There's a woman." James's eyebrows shot up. "Well, that's new." "Victoria Hayes. She works in finance. What makes her different from all the others?" Nathan struggled to explain. "She's real, James. She's not trying to be anything other than who she is. She's not interested in my money or status. She doesn't even know I exist." "Not really. So what are you going to do?" "I don't know. I can't just approach her. She's an employee and I'm the CEO. Any move from me could seem inappropriate." James considered this. "Then you need to be careful. But Nathan, if you really feel something for this woman, don't let fear stop you. You've built an empire by taking calculated risks. Maybe it's time to take a risk on something that actually matters." The opportunity came sooner than Nathan expected. He was reviewing quarterly reports when he noticed missing data from Victoria's department. Normally, he'd have his assistant handle it. This time, he walked to the finance department himself, heart pounding against his ribs like a prisoner demanding release. When he found her at her desk, that little furrow of concentration between her brows, Nathan had to remind himself to breathe. "Victoria Hayes." She looked up. Her eyes were the most beautiful shade of blue he'd ever seen. Clear and honest and startled. "Mr. Cross." She stood quickly, hands trembling. "Is there something I can help you with?" "Please call me Nathan." He smiled, trying to put her at ease. "I was hoping you could help me with some missing data. Do you have a few minutes to discuss it in my office?" He watched the flush creep up her cheeks, noticed the way she clutched her tablet like a shield. "Of course. I can come right now." As they walked through the corridors, Nathan slowed his pace to stay beside her. He asked casual questions about her work, how long she'd been with the company, making conversation that had nothing to do with reports. In his office, Nathan gestured to the comfortable chairs by the window rather than the formal seats across from his desk. Victoria perched on the edge, tablet clutched in her hands. Nathan settled beside her, close enough to catch the floral scent of her perfume. "Tell me about yourself, Victoria." She blinked. "I'm sorry. I thought we were here to discuss the reports." "I realize I don't know much about the people who work so hard to make this company successful. I'd like to change that, starting with you." The conversation lasted over an hour. They barely touched the financial reports. Instead, Nathan asked about her life, her dreams, her interests. He learned that she loved classic romance novels, that she had a younger sister she was close to, that she volunteered at an animal shelter on weekends. He listened with an intensity that made her blush, made her stumble over words, made her come alive in a way he'd never seen in the office. When she finally left, Nathan sat alone in his office, her perfume still lingering in the air. He'd never wanted anything as much as he wanted her. The next morning, Victoria found a perfect coffee waiting on her desk. 2 sugars and cinnamon. Exactly how she liked it. Then came the books. First editions of her favorite romance novels, each accompanied by a small card in elegant handwriting. For the woman who believes in real connections. Because you deserve stories with happy endings. Always hold on to your dreams. Victoria knew they were from Nathan, though he never acknowledged it directly. She'd catch him watching her across the office, and when their eyes met, he'd give her a small smile that made her heart race. "He's totally into you," Sophie teased over lunch one day. A blind person could see it. "I don't understand why, though." Victoria twisted her napkin in her hands. We've barely spoken. What Victoria didn't know was that Nathan knew everything about her. Her favorite books, her coffee order, her weekend routines. He'd made it his mission to learn her, to understand her, to position himself as exactly what she'd been waiting for. He orchestrated chance encounters in hallways, asked her opinion on projects that had nothing to do with her department, found excuses to seek her out, always careful to keep things professional enough that she wouldn't feel pressured, personal enough that she'd know he was interested. 6 weeks after overhearing her confession, Nathan invited Victoria to dinner. "I know this is unusual," he said, standing at her desk with his hands in his pockets, looking almost nervous. "But I'd really like to get to know you better, outside of work. Would you have dinner with me this Friday?" Victoria's heart hammered. Like a date? Yes, like a date. She should have said no. He was her boss's boss. This violated every professional boundary. But the way he looked at her, like she was the only thing in the world that mattered, made her dizzy. Okay. Yes. Nathan's smile could have lit the entire building. Friday arrived wrapped in anxiety and anticipation. Victoria changed outfits 4 times before settling on a simple black dress that made her feel beautiful without trying too hard. Nathan picked her up at 7. He'd chosen a quiet Italian restaurant, intimate and elegant without being ostentatious. Over wine and pasta, they talked like they'd known each other for years. He asked questions that made her think, shared stories that made her laugh, looked at her with an intensity that made her skin flush. "Can I ask you something personal?" Nathan said over dessert, his voice low and careful. "Okay. Why are you still single? A woman like you should have men lining up." Victoria's throat tightened. "I could ask you the same thing." I asked first. She took a sip of wine, gathering courage. "I'm waiting for someone who wants more than just the surface. Someone who sees me, really sees me, and still wants to stay." Nathan reached across the table and took her hand. His touch sent electricity up her arm. "I see you, Victoria, and I'm not going anywhere." 3 months passed like a dream. Nathan courted her with a patience that made her ache. Flowers appeared at her desk. He took her to museums, concerts, quiet dinners where they talked until the restaurants closed. He learned her rhythms, her moods, her fears. He held her hand, kissed her softly, but never pushed for more. He was exactly what she'd been waiting for, and Victoria was falling in love. One night, standing in the rain outside her apartment after dinner, Nathan cupped her face in his hands. "I'm falling for you," he whispered against her lips. "Hard. I'm falling for you too. Then let me in, Victoria. Let me be the one you've been waiting for." She kissed him then, deep and desperate, tasting rain and wine and promise. But as Nathan held her, feeling her trust wrap around him like silk, guilt twisted in his chest like a knife. Because Victoria didn't know the truth. She didn't know that Nathan had heard her confession that day in the cafeteria. Didn't know that every perfect gesture, every shared interest, every carefully crafted moment had been orchestrated, based on information he'd stolen from her most vulnerable moment. She thought he'd fallen for her naturally, organically. She had no idea their entire relationship was built on a lie. Victoria woke up in Nathan's arms for the first time on a Sunday morning that smelled like coffee and rain. Sunlight filtered through his bedroom windows, painting everything gold. She traced patterns on his chest, feeling safe in a way she'd never experienced. "What are you thinking about?" Nathan's voice was rough with sleep. "How perfect this is. How perfect you are." He kissed the top of her head, but something in his chest tightened. The guilt he'd been pushing down for months was getting harder to ignore. "I'm not perfect, Victoria. You are to me." That week, Nathan made a decision. He had to tell her the truth. Their relationship had become real, deeper than anything he'd imagined. He loved her, actually loved her, and he couldn't build a life with her on a foundation of lies. He planned to tell her Friday night over dinner. Rehearsed the words 100 times, but Friday afternoon, everything shattered. Victoria was walking past the executive conference room when she heard voices. The door stood slightly ajar. "I still can't believe you pulled it off. That was James, Nathan's business partner. 6 months ago, you were obsessed with some woman you'd never even spoken to, and now you're living together." Victoria's steps slowed. It wasn't easy. Nathan's voice. But once I knew what she wanted, what she needed, I just had to become that person. How did you figure it out so fast, though? Usually takes you months to get a read on people. Silence. Then, I overheard a conversation she had with her friend in the cafeteria. She didn't know I was listening. Victoria's blood turned to ice. Wait. James laughed. You mean that whole thing about being a virgin? About waiting for someone who really sees her? You heard all of that? Every word. So you basically used her own confession as a playbook. That's either genius or completely psychotic. It was wrong. Nathan's voice was tight now. I know it was wrong. That's why I'm going to tell her tonight. Come clean about everything. Are you insane? Nathan, if you tell her, you'll lose her. She'll never forgive you. I have to. I love her, James. Actually love her. And I can't keep lying to her face every day. Victoria stumbled backward, hand pressed to her mouth to keep from screaming. The hallway tilted. Her vision blurred. Everything had been a lie. Every perfect moment. Every shared interest. Every time he'd said exactly the right thing. He'd known. He'd known what she needed because he'd stolen it from her most vulnerable confession. She'd given him her trust, her body, her heart. And it had all been manipulation. Victoria ran. Through the hallways, down the stairs, into the parking garage. She barely made it to her car before the sobs came, violent and wrenching. Her phone buzzed. Nathan, can't wait for tonight. I love you. She threw the phone across the car. 2 hours later, Victoria sat in her apartment, numbness replacing the tears. Her phone had buzzed 17 times. All Nathan. She'd ignored every call. Then a knock at her door. Victoria, please. I know you're in there. Nathan's voice. Open the door. Let me explain. Go away. I'm not leaving. I'll stand out here all night if I have to. Victoria yanked the door open. Nathan stood there, hair disheveled, eyes wild. He looked like he'd aged 10 years. How did you know I found out? She asked, her voice flat. James called me. Said you were standing outside the conference room. He saw you run. So you rushed over to do damage control. I rushed over because I love you. Victoria laughed, bitter and sharp. You don't even know what love means. Please. Let me explain. Explain what? That you eavesdropped on the most private conversation of my life? That you used my vulnerability as the instruction manual? That everything between us has been a lie? It wasn't all a lie. Nathan stepped forward, desperate. It started that way. I won't deny that. But Victoria, somewhere along the way, it became real. You became real. What I feel for you is real. How am I supposed to believe anything you say? You've been lying to me for 6 months. I was going to tell you tonight. I swear, I couldn't keep lying to you anymore. Oh, how noble. You were going to confess after you'd already gotten everything you wanted from me. Her voice cracked. I gave you everything, Nathan. Everything I'd been saving. Everything I promised myself I'd only give to someone who truly saw me. And it was all based on a lie. I do see you. His eyes were wet now. I see you more clearly than anyone ever has. Yes, I heard that conversation. Yes, I used it. But Victoria, the woman I fell in love with, is so much more than what I heard that day. You're brilliant and kind and funny and strong. You challenge me. You make me want to be better. That's not fake. That's real. Get out. Victoria, please. I said get out. Her voice rose to a scream. Get out of my apartment and out of my life. I never want to see you again. Nathan stood there, tears running down his face, looking more broken than she'd ever seen him. I love you, he whispered. No, you don't. You love the idea of me, the version you constructed based on stolen information. But you don't know the real me, because the real me would never have trusted you if I'd known the truth. She slammed the door in his face. For a long time, Victoria stood there, listening to Nathan's footsteps retreat down the hallway. Then she collapsed on the floor and cried until she had nothing left. The next morning, Victoria called in sick. And the next day, and the next. Sophie came over with wine and tissues. I can't believe he did that, Sophie said, fury in her voice. I thought he was different. I thought he was good for you. I thought so too. Victoria's voice was hollow. I actually believed I'd found what I'd been waiting for. How stupid am I? You're not stupid. He manipulated you. That's not your fault. I gave him everything, Sophie. Everything I'd promised myself I'd save for someone who truly deserved it. And it was all a game to him. It wasn't a game. I'm not defending what he did. But Victoria, I saw the way he looked at you. That wasn't fake. How am I supposed to know what was real and what was performance? Sophie had no answer. A week later, Victoria finally returned to work. She'd already drafted her resignation, ready to leave Cross Technologies and never look back. But when she walked into her office, she found Nathan sitting at her desk. He looked terrible. Dark circles under his eyes, stubble on his jaw, his usually perfect suit wrinkled. "What are you doing here?" Victoria's voice was ice. "Waiting for you." He stood, hands shaking. "I know you don't want to see me. I know you hate me. But I need you to hear something before you walk away forever. I don't want to hear anything you have to say." "Then don't listen for me. Listen for yourself, because you deserve to know the whole truth." Victoria's hand tightened on her bag. "You have 5 minutes." Nathan took a breath that seemed to hurt. "That day in the cafeteria, when I heard your confession, it wasn't some calculated business opportunity. It broke something open in me. For years, I'd told myself that real connection didn't exist, that emotions were weakness. I'd built this entire life around being untouchable, and then I heard you describe exactly what I'd given up believing in. It terrified me, and I knew I had to try to become the person worthy of that. By manipulating me? Yes, by manipulating you. And that was unforgivable. But Victoria, somewhere in those 6 months, I stopped pretending. I fell in love with you. The real you, not the version I heard about. The woman who argues with me about books, who makes terrible jokes, who snorts when she laughs really hard. The woman who's stronger than she thinks and braver than she knows. Tears slid down Victoria's cheeks. How am I supposed to trust that? How am I supposed to trust anything about us? You can't, I know that. I destroyed your trust and I'll never forgive myself for that. Nathan's voice broke. But I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm asking for a chance to earn back what I threw away. Let me prove to you that what we have is real. Victoria looked at him. This broken man she'd thought she loved, and felt something shift inside her. Not forgiveness, but curiosity about whether broken things could be rebuilt. 3 months, Victoria said, her voice steady despite the storm inside her. You get 3 months to prove this wasn't all manipulation, but we start over, completely. No touching, no romantic gestures. We date like strangers who just met. And the moment I feel like you're using what you know about me, we're done. Forever. Nathan's relief was palpable. Anything. I'll do anything. And you tell me everything. Every single thing you heard that day, every piece of information you used. I want to know exactly how deep the deception went. Nathan nodded, even though the request felt like swallowing glass. They met that night at a coffee shop, neutral territory. Nathan sat across from her, hands wrapped around a cup he wasn't drinking from, and confessed everything. The books, the coffee order, the museum he'd taken her to because she'd mentioned loving impressionist paintings, every calculated gesture, every manufactured coincidence. Victoria listened, her face unreadable, filing away each revelation like evidence. Is there anything about us that was real? She asked when he finished. The conversations, the way you challenge my thinking, the way you make me laugh, your terrible singing in the car, the fact that you steal all my fries but always say you're not hungry? Nathan's voice cracked. I didn't know any of that before. I discovered it by being with you. That's real, Victoria. That's all real. Over the next 3 months, they rebuilt from scratch. Nathan courted her like he'd never heard that confession, never known what she wanted. He stumbled, made mistakes, showed up late, said the wrong thing. He let her see him imperfect and uncertain and scared. And slowly, Victoria began to see the difference between the manufactured Nathan and the real one. The real Nathan was messier. He got insecure when she talked to other men. He sulked when she canceled plans. He admitted when he didn't know things. He let her see his fear that she'd never forgive him, never trust him, never love him again. It was ugly and honest and somehow more beautiful than the perfection had been. You're different now, Victoria said one night over dinner. 3 weeks into their arrangement. How? You're real. Before you were like a character in a novel. Too good to be true. Now you're human, flawed. Is that better or worse? Victoria considered. Better. I can't love a character, but maybe I could love a person. Nathan's eyes searched hers. Maybe? We'll see. At work, they kept their distance. Victoria had insisted on that. No special treatment, no favoritism, nothing that would make people talk. But Nathan found himself seeking her out anyway, drawn to her like gravity. James confronted him one afternoon. You're miserable. I'm patient. You're suffering. Nathan, maybe it's time to accept that some things can't be fixed. I'm not giving up on her. Even if it destroys you? Even then. 2 months into their trial period, Victoria got a job offer. A competitor had headhunted her for a senior position with double her current salary. She sat on Nathan's couch, the offer letter in her hands, face torn. I should take it, she said. It's an incredible opportunity. You should. Nathan's voice was steady, even though his heart was breaking. But if I take it, I'll be working for your biggest competitor. It could hurt Cross Technologies. It could hurt you. Victoria, I won't be the reason you limit your potential. If this is what you want, take it. I'll survive. She looked at him stunned. The old Nathan, the manipulative one, would have found a way to make her stay, would have used guilt or persuasion or charm. This Nathan was willing to lose her if it meant she'd be happy. I'll think about it, she said. That night, Nathan made a decision. If Victoria took the job, he'd let her go. No fighting, no manipulation, no using his feelings as leverage. He'd love her enough to let her choose her future without him in it. But 3 days later, Victoria showed up at his door. I turned it down. Nathan's breath caught. Why? Because I realized something. You were willing to let me go. The old you would have fought to keep me, would have found a way to make me stay. But you were ready to sacrifice what you wanted for what was best for me. And that told me something important. What? That maybe you really do love me. The real me, not the version you constructed. Nathan pulled her into his arms, breathing in the scent of her hair, feeling her warmth against him. I love you, he whispered. God, I love you so much. I'm not ready to say it back yet. But Nathan, I'm close. 3 weeks later, they were lying in bed, tangled together after making love. Victoria traced patterns on his chest, feeling content in a way she'd never imagined after discovering his betrayal. Can I ask you something? She said. Anything. That day in the cafeteria, when you heard me talking to Sophie. What made you decide to pursue me instead of just walking away? Nathan was quiet for a long moment. Because you described the exact kind of connection I'd given up believing existed. And I realized I'd been sleepwalking through my life, going through the motions, never really feeling anything. You woke me up, scared me awake. Do you regret how it started? Every single day, but I don't regret where we ended up. Is that selfish? Probably, but I think I understand. Victoria rolled over to look at him, her blue eyes serious. I need you to promise me something. Anything. No more secrets. No more manipulation. No more trying to control outcomes. If we do this, if we really commit to each other, it has to be built on truth, even when the truth is ugly, even when it hurts. Can you promise me that? Nathan cupped her face in his hands. I promise. No more lies. No more games, just us. Real and messy and honest. Okay, okay? Okay, I'm in. I'm choosing you. I'm choosing us. Nathan kissed her then, deep and desperate, tasting forgiveness and hope and second chances. But what neither of them knew was that the past wasn't finished with them yet, because James had been watching Nathan's obsession with Victoria from the beginning, had seen how it consumed him, changed him, made him vulnerable in a way James had never seen. And James had decided that Victoria was a liability, a weakness that would eventually destroy everything they'd built. So James made his own decision. If Nathan wouldn't protect himself, James would do it for him, even if it meant destroying the woman Nathan loved. The email arrived on a Tuesday morning, sent from an anonymous account to every member of the Cross Technologies board. Victoria was copied, along with 50 other employees. Subject: the CEO's conflict of interest. Nathan Cross has been engaged in a relationship with employee Victoria Hayes. This relationship began when Mr. Cross eavesdropped on a private conversation in which Ms. Hayes disclosed intimate personal information. Mr. Cross then used this information to manipulate Ms. Hayes into a relationship. This represents gross ethical violations and potential grounds for dismissal. Attached is evidence of their relationship timeline and Mr. Cross's own admission of the eavesdropping incident, recorded during a conversation with James Bennett. Victoria's hands shook as she read it. Around the office, phones buzzed. Computers pinged. The gossip spread like wildfire. Within an hour, Nathan was summoned to an emergency board meeting. Victoria was placed on administrative leave, escorted from the building by security while her colleagues watched. Sophie met her at her apartment, fury in her eyes. Who would do this? Who would weaponize what happened to you? I don't know. But even as Victoria said it, her mind was racing. Who knew the full story? Who had access to recordings? Her phone rang. Nathan. Don't answer the board's questions, he said immediately, his voice tight. They're going to try to interview you. Don't say anything without a lawyer. Nathan, what's happening? I'm being investigated. They're talking about firing me for ethics violations, using my position to pursue a subordinate. The eavesdropping, all of it. This is my fault. If I hadn't agreed to start over with you. No, this is on me. It's always been on me. He took a shaky breath. But Victoria, I need to tell you something. I think I know who sent that email. Who? James. The name hit her like a fist. Your business partner? Your best friend? He's been telling me for months that you're a liability, that I'm too distracted, that I've lost my edge. He must have recorded that conversation when I confessed to him. He's trying to force us apart. Why would he do that? Because he thinks he's protecting me. Protecting the company. Nathan's voice cracked. But he doesn't understand that without you, none of it matters anymore. The board meeting lasted 6 hours. When Nathan finally emerged, he looked destroyed. He went straight to Victoria's apartment. She opened the door before he could knock. They gave me a choice, Nathan said without preamble. Step down as CEO, or they'll launch a public investigation that will destroy both of us. They'll paint you as complicit, as someone who slept her way into a relationship with the boss. They'll ruin your reputation. Make sure you never work in this industry again. Victoria's face went pale. What did you say? I told them I need 24 hours to decide. Nathan, you can't step down. You built that company from nothing. It's your entire life. You're my entire life. He pulled her into his arms. Victoria, I don't care about the company. I don't care about the money or the status or any of it. All I care about is you. That's not fair. You're sacrificing everything because of me. No. I'm choosing you over everything else. There's a difference. Victoria pulled back, tears streaming down her face. But what if I'm not enough? What if you wake up 5 years from now and resent me for everything you gave up? That's not going to happen. You don't know that. Nathan cupped her face in his hands. Victoria, the day I heard you in that cafeteria, you said you were waiting for someone who would see you. Really see you. I see you. I see your strength and your fear and your beauty and your doubt. I see all of it. And I choose it. I choose you. Over everything. What about James? Nathan's jaw tightened. James and I are done. What he did was unforgivable. He used your vulnerability as a weapon. He tried to destroy you to protect me. That's not friendship. That's control. He'll own the company if you step down. I know. And maybe he thinks he's won. But he doesn't understand that I already have everything I need. Victoria kissed him then, tasting salt and desperation and love. You're sure about this? She whispered against his lips. I've never been more sure of anything. The next morning, Nathan walked into the boardroom and submitted his resignation. The board accepted immediately, installing James as interim CEO. Nathan cleaned out his office, said goodbye to the company he'd built, and walked away without looking back. That afternoon, he showed up at Victoria's apartment with 2 suitcases and a grin. I'm unemployed. Got any room for a washed-up billionaire? Victoria laughed through her tears. Always. 6 months later, they stood on a beach in Hawaii, waves crashing behind them. Nathan wore linen pants and a white shirt, looking more relaxed than Victoria had ever seen him. She wore a simple white dress, her hair loose in the wind. Sophie stood beside her as maid of honor. A handful of close friends watched from rented chairs. I promise to always tell you the truth, Nathan said, his voice steady. Even when it's ugly, even when it hurts, I promise to choose you every single day, to see you, really see you for exactly who you are. I promise to trust you, Victoria replied, tears on her cheeks. Even when it's scary, even when it's hard, I promise to believe in us, in the messy, imperfect, real version of us. They kissed as the sun set behind them, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink. Later, at the small reception, Sophie pulled Victoria aside. Are you happy? Victoria looked across the patio where Nathan was laughing with friends, his arm around her father's shoulders. I am. It's not the fairy tale I imagined when I was younger. It's messier than that, more complicated. We started with a lie and built toward truth. That's backward from how it's supposed to go. But you got there in the end. Yeah, we did. Nathan caught her eye and smiled. That real smile that was nothing like the perfect one he'd worn when they first met. This smile was crooked and genuine and entirely his own. Victoria smiled back. 6 months after the wedding, Nathan launched a new startup focused on ethical technology practices. Victoria joined him as co-founder, bringing her financial expertise to the venture. They worked side by side, building something new together. James tried to reach out once, claiming he'd only been trying to protect Nathan. Nathan deleted the message without responding. Some betrayals couldn't be forgiven. On their first anniversary, Nathan took Victoria back to that same cafeteria where it had all begun. They sat at the same table where she'd confessed her fears to Sophie. Do you ever regret it? Victoria asked. Giving up everything for me? Nathan took her hand. I didn't give up everything. I traded a company for a partner, a title for a life, control for connection. That's not a sacrifice. That's evolution. Even though it started with a lie. Even though, he kissed her knuckles, we took something broken and made it whole. That's what love does, Victoria. It transforms. It redeems. It takes our worst moments and gives us the chance to become better. You sound like one of my romance novels. I've been reading them, trying to understand why you love them so much. And I get it now. They're not about perfection. They're about people who are flawed and scared and damaged, finding each other anyway, choosing each other despite the fear, building something real out of broken pieces. Victoria leaned across the table and kissed him, right there in the cafeteria where it had all begun. I love you, she whispered. I love you too. Always. They walked out of the building hand in hand, leaving the past behind them. The future stretched ahead, uncertain and messy and beautiful. They had no guarantees, no promises that it would be easy, just a choice they made every day to keep building, keep trusting, keep choosing each other. And in the end, that was enough. More than enough. It was everything. The end.